My name is Judith Adams from Sydney, Australia, and on behalf of the Smocking Arts Guild of America, I'd like to introduce you to the magic little smocking pleater. The pleater is used to gather fabric, so you don't have the arduous job of picking up dots anymore. There are many brands around, Dr. Joe, Sally Stanley, Newell, Mary, Pull and Pleater, and the Amanda Jane. I'm going to demonstrate on an Amanda Jane 16-row pleater. The pleater is made up of 4 interlocking grooved rollers that fit together. They have specially shaped needles that go in under the grooves, all right, to collect the fabric and come out already pleated, ready for you to do your lovely hand smocking. The needles are a special shape. The needles, the shaft of the needle is straight, and that will be the part that protrudes out the front of the pleater, and the curved section will go over the rollers and through to collect the fabric. We need to insert the needles in order to put them in for the smocking sew. Elevate the front of your pleater. That way, when you put a needle in, it's not going to fall straight out again. Hold the needle carefully and place it into the hole as far back as possible until it stops, and then just let it sit. We're going to pleat a piece of fabric for the skirt of a small doll's dress. So I'm going to have 5 full space needles. So let me put in 5 full space needles, and a full space is separated, it's 1 centimetre, approximately 3/8 of an inch apart. So 5 needles will go in, put them in and drop it down. In as far as you can and drop it down for 5 needles, and that will give me a holding row at the top and the bottom and the section in the middle to smock on. Now I'm going to put in some half rows. So that means I'm going to have a needle in the middle to guide me between the full space rows. So that's 4 more needles, and then I can place back in the pleater the removable rod. Now this removable rod for the Amanda Jane and some reeds have a little locking pin that goes in the 2 sides. If you have a pleater that has where the removable rod is held in place with a screwdriver, a screw and a lug, turn the screw to release it until it eases out and you can move the lug out of the way. Don't remove the screw altogether. All right, now just take out the little whatever you've used to elevate the front of the pleater with, and you're ready to thread the needles. If you ever have a needle, this is a good needle with a shape with a little swan's head at the front. A bad needle will be out of shape, like the one here at the bottom. If you have any of those in your pleater, it's not going to pick up the fabric properly. You might even hear a little popping sound. Throw it away. Needles are cheap, pleaters aren't. Right, I'm going to thread up, and I'm going to thread all of my full space rows in one colour and all my half space rows in another colour. I use Gutermann or Metricine polyester machine thread. A lot of people use quilting thread. Anything is acceptable. I tend to use a darker colour for a full space row and a different colour, bright colour, yellow or orange for the half space rows. So I've cut my pieces of thread, and I'm going to slide a piece of white paper underneath the needles so I can see the eyes, and then I'm going to hold it securely, rest my fingers there and start to thread the needles. So now I'm going to thread the needles. I'm threading down the needle, so I only need to overlap the threads approximately 5 to 6 inches, around 15 centimetres. All the full space rows are 1 centimetre apart, or 3/8 of an inch. So every second needle here is a full space row, so I'm using green in the full space rows, and then I'm going to put orange in the half space rows. Usually threading the needles is the longest part of the pleating. Thank you. If you thread using a needle threader, you'll find that your short thread will be the one on the top. If you thread as I do, straight down, then your short thread will be the thread underneath. You don't need to double them up. You don't need that strength. You want to beware that you don't go and buy bargain basement threads because they will snap and break when you are trying to do your smocking or pleated afterwards. If you see my fingers, I'm supporting them so they don't move around whilst I'm doing the threading. Sometimes if they won't, just cut and come back to when I've finished it. Okay, so if you see that, I've got green on all my full space rows, so row 1, row 2, row 3, 4 and 5 have green thread. Row 1.5, 2.5, 3.5 and 4.5 have an orange thread. Okay. I'm going to roll up my fabric onto a dowel. The edge that's going to be pleated will be the right hand side, and we're going to start and roll it towards ourselves. Now when you're rolling, it doesn't have to be exactly even, it's just got to be pretty close, just like that. It doesn't matter how it's rolled onto the dowel, it matters how it's fed into the pleater. And that's ready to go into your pleater now. I'm going to have the side that's going to have the smocking worked on it on the right hand side. And I'm going to slide my dowel in here until it's fully supported. If you've got a selvage there that's tightly woven, you can trim it off. If you've got fuzzies on the selvage, trim those off. If you wash your fabric before, you'll get rid of any of the sizing. Now, normally you will try and sight if my last pleating needle is here, so I'm going to jump up to here, one full space, 1 centimetre, 3/8 of an inch above that, and sight that for putting in my fabric. And then all I do is turn the handle away from myself. I don't need to hold the rod, just turn it away, help it off the rod, off the dowel, and then when I've filled with pleats here, just pull them off. This fabric is an Imperial Batiste and it's washed before to make sure it doesn't have any sizing. You will hear the pleater when it fills with needles talking to you because it starts to feel hard and it groans. Clear the needles. You need to clear the needles before it starts to talk to you and start to complain. Alright, so turn the handle. Pull off the fabric just by easing it with your fingers. Pull it off at the front. Now, all of my threads were longer on the bottom, so if I pull it down a little bit, all those shorter threads will just pull out, and I've got it already pleated, ready for my smocking. Now I hope I have shown you a little bit of how easy it is to do the smocking, to do the pleating, ready for your hand smocking, and I hope it will encourage you to experiment, to practice, to think outside the box. You can smock not only the bottom of the sleeve, but you could smock the curved top of a sleeve. You can gather fabric with it. Rather than run it through a machine for gathering, put it through your pleater. So I'd encourage you to enjoy your pleater as much as you enjoy your smocking.